If I may interject, Rosy, I mean, the philosophical foundation for what you say and the longer term societal and political change is one thing. We must not forget that people are dying today. They're dying now. Lasantha Wickrematunge, the attacks on independent voices and independent media, on civil society activists and human rights defenders, these are occurring now, today. And even as we wish and desire for change over the longer term, as a political activist, what can and should you do to bring about an immediate stop to this violence?
I strongly believe that people should stand together. People should band together to fight. As much as we stand together as a one nation, one people to eradicate terrorism, we need to stand together as one nation, one people to fight against this kind of violence that one cannot comprehend.
People are scared, Rosy.
See, the thing is, if we all sit back and say we are scared, now I would love to, not love to, I mean, take this opportunity to basically give all the credit and to thank Lasantha Wickrematunge from the bottom of my heart. I may not have agreed with 100% of what he said or wrote, but 80% of what was said and what he stood for, I would agree with. And he always stood for a just society, a just nation, and for the truth, and fearlessly, at the risk of basically laying his life down, which did happen. And I'm saddened by what has happened. And if people can be so cruel into destroying institutions that would speak the truth or give society something, media institutions and media personnel. It's not only the media personnel, it's people from all walks of life. If they come in your way, and if they come in the way where you think and you believe that this is the only way to resolve something, and if you are eradicating human beings who would have a different opinion or a different perception, then I don't think you have really won the victory.
You spoke about institutions and, in a sense, the culture of violence that pervades the institutional architectonics of governance in Sri Lanka. A report released in late in 2008, I believe it was November 2008, that looked at intra-party, inner-party democracy, looking at also the UNP and the SLFP, suggested amongst many other things that inner-party democracy is extremely poor in Sri Lanka. You are not dealing with political parties and a political party architecture inside the political party that affords democratic space for young leaders to be nurtured, to find their way to the top of the political party. It's still a very parochial, it's almost feudal in some respects.
I agree. That's why I said that, I think you were talking about the family institution, and then you brought this aspect of, what Mr. Udayagama had said. That's why I said, the mindsets have to change, and I agree with you. Democracy, or perhaps freedom to live, or to have independence. We talk about gender equality, equity in society. That has to start in the family institution itself. I find that this divide and rule, division, thinking differently about another sex or another person starts in the home. We treat the girl child, or rather the boy child, better than the girl child. But today in society we see that the father is treated differently from the mother, and father has very little respect for the mother, and that's why we find that violence against women is increasing rapidly. Right, whether it's physical, mental, or verbal violence, it is violence which would basically.
So let me ask you, that violence that you're pointing to against women, primarily, and also
all this is because of the mindset.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. If you were to use that and were to address that, how would you go about doing it?
Changing mindsets.
But how would you do that?
Well, I think we need to institutions such as yours, institutions such as the media. Media has a key and a major role. I strongly believe that the media is one of the major components in molding a country into becoming what it should become. In Sri Lanka, what I feel right now, as much as the value system is deteriorating, we have a very selfish, self-centered society that has been bred. And that's what I see. Everybody's very selfish. Everybody only thinks about themselves. and their family, and they live in their own little cocoon, and they don't want to think beyond, you know, loads of parents. And it starts in the home. I'll tell you why. Because the child is being taught to be very selfish. Child is being taught to lie at a very young age because you want to get the child into one of the national so-called, you know, elitist kind of schools. From there onwards, it starts, you know, okay.
It's a chicken and egg scenario though, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, you are talking about a political architecture which doesn't afford that choice to families or affords them the space to think in that manner, and then you're talking about families and the upbringing of children that then contributes back into the political architecture, which is a vicious circle.
It's a vicious cycle, which is I agree with you, but it's just that, Sanjana, what I'm trying to say is, I think you didn't let me just finish my conversation. A lot of people would sit back and what is happening and say, oh, it is happening, and I'm saddened by it, but wouldn't, you know, take that step forward to make the change.
Okay, and I'm asking you, how would you encourage them to do that?
What I'm trying to tell society today is, directly or indirectly, politics determines how well or how badly you live. And I think people, when they appoint politicians, or because it is the people's power that eventually brings in these people who basically rules the country or whatever, right? And they need to be more responsible when they elect the person that they think is right to rule the country and, you know, to better themselves or for the development of the country.
You know the political architecture of Sri Lanka. You know.
We need to change this whole scenario.
And do you believe, though, that, I mean, in discussions before our conversation, you mentioned that the political the representation of
I'm
women.
about to say that.
Yeah.
There need to be a lot of constitutional changes. Now, in order to make those constitutional changes, you have to have the right caliber of person going in there who will have the right mindset and the right attitude towards life and towards society and towards making this country a better place for the next generation to live. It doesn't matter who is in governance. It doesn't matter who is doing it. It could be the UMP, it could be the SLFP, it could be the JVP, it could be anyone. But I would stand up for what is right. And a lot of people would sit back and expect someone else to do it for you.
So should we clone you?
Oh, believe me, no. You don't have to clone me. But it's just that, you know, I think you have a responsibility, Sanjana, and I have a responsibility to be able to, you know, speak up and encourage people and touch the hearts of the people and tell them what is right and what is wrong.
Yes, but at
the cost of losing your life,
right,
maybe.
Right, I'll come back to that later, but the reason I also, tongue-in-cheek in a sense, but I asked whether we should clone, you know, is a serious question, which is that, you know, do you feel that the representation at all levels of polity, in particular of women, can and will make a difference?
Absolutely,
How?
absolutely. Because if you take the last census in this country, the majority of the population, if you talk about gender, 53.8% are females, and I think it has increased. The last census was taken like about 10 or 12 years ago. It has increased. And if you're talking about a democratic society, free and fair representation, then we have to have that amount of females also in the decision-making process, which we don't have. And I'm in the fight for at least fighting for 25% or 20% of female representation
at
in there.
local government upwards, is it?
Local government is zero. We just have not even a 1%. At the national level, we have like a 4 percent. In the late 20s, in 1927, when the Women's Franchise Union fought for women's rights and, you know, universal franchise, I must say those women today must be turning in their graves, and I'm sad to say that, you know, my great-grandmother-in-law, they were the people who actually fought for this, the universal franchise. We were one of those countries in this region that, you know, won rights for women, and I'm very proud of that. But that was in 1931. In 1931, within 6 months, Adeline Molomure was the first woman to go into the council. There were 4% then. We are in the 21st century. We are past 75 years, and we are still there. And even if you look at Parliament, the most supreme institution, today there's a question whether the judiciary or legislature is more supreme, but the most supreme institution, we still have 4%. We haven't gone beyond 5. And even if you take that 4%, I'm sad to say this, don't get me wrong, the vast majority are by default. Either it's the father's daughter or the husband's wife or the brother's sister or whatever.